Hi, my name is Pastor Hal York, and welcome to Truth in the Trenches. Today we're going to be Proverbs chapter 27, verse 4, where we read, "Wrath is fierce, and anger is a flood. But who can stand before jealousy?" Just think about those three words, wrath, anger, and jealousy. When one thinks about wrath or anger, we're thinking about things that manifest themselves outwardly. You will often hear when people are describing a crime scene, whoever did this was very angry, and the evidence of that anger and wrath are seen in the degree of violence and destruction that was demonstrated as they perpetrated this crime. In Proverbs says wrath is fierce, it's brutal. Anger is a flood. Once it gets rolling, it just keeps getting stronger and stronger. It's hard to stop. And we're told to avoid the company of angry people lest we learn their ways. The same would hold true for those given to wrath. It's not hard to avoid the company of such people because generally they're not that hard to spot. We probably all made the statement, having spent time with someone, they just seem so angry. You see it in their face, you sense it in their body language, you hear it in their words, in their tone of voice. And such is the nature of wrath and anger. Wrath is really just the expression of anger. Verse 4 follows verse 3, where we read, "A stone is heavy and sand weighty, but the provocation of a fool is heavier than both of them." And simply referring to a stone that's too heavy to lift. The sand of the beach is immeasurable in its weight and its volume. Yet there's something heavier than both of those things together. It's the provocation of a fool. And in verse 4, the writer is simply using that same analogy. Wrath and anger can be fierce and unrelenting. But there's something even worse. You say, well, what could possibly be worse than wrath and anger? He tells us, who can stand before jealousy? Now, jealousy and envy are basically two sides of the same coin. But the thing about jealousy is this. Wrath and anger are obvious. They're hard to hide. But jealousy is the master of disguise. It has 1,000 faces. It's like fighting terrorism. You never know who the enemy is. They're hard to spot. They blend into society. The jealous person is a master of pretending, of setting you up, of feigning love, of loyalty, uses flattery. But they will stab you in the back the first chance they get. And if you turn around, they'll stab you in the heart. Just think how many mass shootings in schools, if you listen to the motivation and the reasoning behind the people who did this, how many of these shootings were committed by jealous people? Jealous of schoolmates who were popular, jealous of the people who had the boyfriends or the girlfriends. They were jealous of good athletes. They have none of those things, at least in their own estimation, and it was someone else's fault. Or if I can't have those things, then they're not going to allow anyone else to have them either. And that's the rationale of a jealous person. Who can stand before jealousy? Jealousy is vicious. It doesn't fight fair. It spreads lies, slander, innuendo, to assassinate someone's character, to ruin a person's reputation, sometimes permanently, all because they were jealous. Now, a few well-timed remarks to the right person in a person's career, maybe family or marriage, can be destroyed. For what? For truth? No. Because someone was jealous of what they had or what they'd accomplished in their life. David could not be in the same room with Saul. Why? Because Saul was jealous of him. Saul was the king. But David was getting more praise than him, and rightly so. Saul didn't fight Goliath. David did. But Saul was jealous. It wasn't enough to be king. He couldn't see that David deserved the praise he was getting. All he could see that he wasn't getting the praise he so desperately craved and wanted and thought he deserved. So the spear began to fly. He was trying to kill him. David was no longer safe when Saul was around. Who can stand before jealousy? You can't. That's what jealous people are like. They're not safe to be around. They are dangerous. They may sound sweet. They may be flattering you and they may sound wonderful, but if they're jealous, they're not safe to be around. There is an evil that is done not overtly like wrath and anger, but covertly like a terrorist. That's what jealous people are like. Their evil is hidden. It's whispers. It's innuendo. But eventually jealousy will show its true colors. Proverbs 6:34 says, "For jealousy makes a man furious, and he will not spare when he takes revenge," as we said earlier. How many times do you see people just doing terrible, terrible things? And when you listen to their reasoning behind it, often it was a jealous heart that led to this rage that they could not control. That's the reason anger can be so violent, so furious, so over the top with vengeance and destruction, because it is fueled by jealousy. I think jealousy may be one of those sins that is most like Satan. Satan was jealous of God. He wanted to be like God. What did he do when he was kicked out of heaven? If I can't be there, then I'm going to do everything in my power to see that no one gets there. So he tempts Adam and Eve to sin by maligning the character of God. And God is holding back and God is lying. He won't die. Now, Satan didn't do this with a gun or a sword, but with sweet-sounding words. An angel of light is how jealousy often presents itself. And it's something we all struggle with. But we need to see it for what it really is. It's a lion that must be tamed or it will destroy us. Well, how do you battle it? I think Paul tells us in Philippians 4, we need to learn to be content. We need to learn to give thanks in everything. We look at our culture. It's fueled by jealousy. It's why the violence is often so out of proportion to the offense. It's driven by jealous people. I don't have what they have, and it's their fault. Who can stand before it? It's not to be taken lightly. It's a sin we need to face, and we need to kill if it's in us, or it will kill us. Wrath is fierce, and anger is a flood. But who can stand before jealousy? By the grace of God and the Spirit of God, we can deal with it, we can kill it, but we need to guard our hearts, because this is a sin unlike, really, in some respects, any other, because it's subtle, it's dangerous, but it's also hidden. And when it takes root in the heart, what it produces can be very, very dangerous and ugly. And so may this truth guide us and guard us in the trenches of life. We just seek to live our lives for the glory of God and the good of others. May God bless.